Welcome to today's webinar on negotiating a higher salary. It's called Ask for More. My name is Alexandra Stevens, and I am the Associate Director of Alumni Programs here at the Hyatt Career Center, and we're sponsoring today's webinar. I'm excited to have you all with us. We had a record number of registrants for this webinar, so we really know how important of a topic it is. So welcome to all of you joining us live, and also to those of you who will be listening to the recording later on this afternoon. We'll be taking questions throughout the broadcast through the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll ask those during the Q&A portion at the end. We also will be doing a series of poll questions, so please feel free to participate in those and make it a little more interactive today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our speaker, Ingrid Bloch. For nearly 20 years, Ingrid has been advising professionals and world-class companies on how to position themselves in an ever-changing marketplace. Through her unique blend of psychology, artistic, and business skills, she helps her clients increase their work and life satisfaction. As a founder of Mosaic Careers, she leads career management workshops, assists in outplacement training, and provides career counseling and assessment for individuals undergoing work and life transition. Welcome, Ingrid.
I'm going to chime in. Thank you, Alexandra, for that warm introduction. I know that you've been dealing with a cold, and I'd just like to say thank you for inviting me back. I gave a webinar last year on acing the interview, so please look for that as well. So I'm happy to be virtually sharing your lunch hour with you, and I know that this is an important topic because it really brings up not only your standard of living, but it brings up other topics as well, which is the psychology behind why people don't negotiate. So before we get started, I just want to preface this webinar by stating that by telling you that the information I'm sharing with you is for a U.S. job search. Negotiations in other countries can look much different. However, this is targeted to those looking for a job in the U.S., and the strategies and information that I'm going to share with you is what is expected and normal in the U.S. So before we get started with my presentation, I'd love to ask you all the first question, which is how many of you have negotiated a higher salary? Alexandra, are you still with us? Hello?
I'm still with
okay.
you, but I am slightly dying over here.
So I'd love to see if you took your job without negotiating, just yes or no. And that will help me in knowing how many of you are new to this and how many just need to refine some of your strategies.
So we'll give you just a couple more seconds to weigh in on your poll on your screen right now. Did you take your last job without negotiating your salary?
And my goal as you're answering this poll and Alexandra's pulling together the results is that you're going to leave this webinar with strategies and ideas to give you more confidence and make the negotiation process less painful. And I use the word painful because I hear from so many clients and other professionals that it actually feels painful. There's visceral feelings in people's stomach, people sweat, they feel emotionally stressed out when they think about negotiating. So probably you would fall into that category because it shows that 58%.
Yes, exactly. 58% took their last job without negotiating their salary, and 42% did negotiate, so about half and half.
And that brings me to the learning outcomes for today. So my hope by the end of this hour is that you're going to learn why it's important to negotiate. Oftentimes the question comes, well, do I really have to negotiate if the offer was good? And we'll get back to that. Understand why people don't negotiate, learn how to prepare for a negotiation, and learn strategies to overcome the salary question before an offer is made. So oftentimes you're going to be asked about salary early on in the process, long before you even know the full scope of the job. And it's difficult to answer that question, and people often start negotiating at various times throughout the process, and I'd like to share with you the right time to do that. And
Ingrid,
also to
just before you, sorry, Ingrid, before you move on, it looks like you were bounced out of full screen.
oh, all righty then. There we go. Oh, and I'm back to full screen.
There we go. Great.
Okay. And also gain the confidence in your ability to negotiate, because it really takes confidence to be able to take that step to negotiate. What I want to say about negotiating is that it's not a war, it's not a fight, it is a simple conversation. And if you go into the process believing that it is a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement, it's a simple discussion, then versus thinking that there's going to be conflict, you will be better able to actually negotiate. Companies and organizations today really want to hire good people. I mean, they used to as well, but you have to go in believing that an organization wants to hire good people and they want to be competitive in the market. Companies, organizations have their own reputation to uphold, and they are going in trying to pay a fair wage. I know that there's exceptions. I hear stories of clients of mine saying, well, this company really tried to get me for cheap. But in general, the average organization and company has done their own market research. They know what is a competitive wage, because if they're not paying a competitive wage, they won't get good people. So it really is a win-win to come to an agreement that both parties will be happy with. So one of the reasons that people don't negotiate is that psychology gets in the way. And when we're young, we're told things like, if there's a plate of cookies, don't be greedy, only take one. Just who do you think you are? All these tapes, messages that maybe you've gotten from grandparents, parents, and other associations are that you might feel, I really need this job, and if I negotiate, they won't want me. They'll go to somebody else. I don't want to lose that opportunity. People are afraid to be rejected. What will happen if I put myself out there and ask and they say no? Am I going to start this job in a negative light? I should be grateful. So there's the fear, or that there's a lot of competition out there and I'm lucky to even have a job. Or if it took you a long time to secure this job, people are afraid that if they negotiate, they won't get the job. So whether it took you 2 weeks to get the job or a year to get the job, please know that it's appropriate to negotiate. And if you do it in the right way, you're going to end the negotiation on a positive note, and people will feel good about you. People don't want to be too pushy. So depending on your personality, your culture, your style, for some extroverts or some positions like sales or some marketing finance, it's appropriate to be more pushy. Others, people might feel that it isn't appropriate. This is really when some gender biases come in, and I say gender based on the research of male-female, but it will translate into the non-dominant culture. I think those of you who are not white male can often be seen as too pushy in this process. And the way that I will teach you how to negotiate is really how to open a conversation. People say, don't be greedy. That goes back to my cookie issue. And another issue that people have is, well, I won't be liked. And I just want you to think for a minute about what associations you have when you think about negotiating. And do you have any psychological barriers that might be getting in the way of just having a business conversation? It's important that you're aware of them, maybe think where they came from, and then put them aside and do it anyway. I'm going to tell you why. If you choose not to negotiate over the course of your career, you could be out over $1 million. So this is an example from a workshop given by the university women called Start Smart. And one of the examples here is if two people are offered a job and Jim accepts the job without negotiating at $45,000 and Jane is able to negotiate $50,000, so just a $5,000 difference. And then everybody gets a standard terrible 1% raise every year. However, Jane takes it upon herself to renegotiate every third year. So she renegotiates for a 4% raise. By the end of their career, there's going to be a $43,616 wage gap and over $1 million in wages. So to ask yourself, are you willing to put yourself out there, maybe feel a little uncomfortable for a very short amount of time for you to not only make a difference of, let's just, for this example, $5,000 difference, but over the course of your career, it might be $1 million on the table. And this is where I do the Ingrid Bloch version to really inspire people to negotiate. Ask yourself, are you willing to be uncomfortable for 10 minutes out of your life to make $8,000? And think of all the things you can do with that money. Also, it isn't just the extra money when you start the job, as I said, but where you'll end up down the road. So what would you do with that money across your career? And the joke I always say is, where else can you make thousands and thousands of dollars in 10 minutes time that's actually legal? And I've often heard, well, gambling and investing, but in general, this is a great way to legally make thousands and thousands of dollars in less than a half an hour out of your life. So if that doesn't, yes?
That's so true, Ingrid. And the other thing, just to add to that, is that most employers expect you to negotiate. So that's another point that I've heard both from recruiters and HR professionals. They're expecting you to negotiate, and often in many industries, the job offer you're given takes that into account.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up, especially if a part of your position or job has negotiation in it. So yes, if you're negotiating with vendors or contracts, but there's many aspects of project management where you're trying to negotiate with other people to get something done on time and on budget. And it really demonstrates to the company your skill. And so you actually might end up looking better in their eyes if you attempt to negotiate, they're expecting it, and you handle it really well and you're prepared. You will start higher in their mind than if you don't negotiate. So the first part of understanding negotiations is understanding that there are 4 times that salary is going to come up. And salary comes up during online applications, during a cover letter, during the interview, and during the job offer. And it's important that you, before you even start applying for jobs, do your preparation. Because if you have the knowledge going into a job application where you're having to fill in those forced fields online, or writing a cover letter, and going into your interview, you're going to be much better prepared. So one place that people don't do well is that they'll start a job search before they really understand what jobs are paying. So the first step is to benchmark salaries and benefits. There's plenty of online resources that you can put in your desired position. You can put in the area that you live, because different salaries different organizations will pay differently depending on if you're in an expensive place like Boston, San Francisco, New York, versus if you're living somewhere in Wisconsin. And here's a few ideas of places that you can benchmark salaries and benefits. But I think the #1 place to benchmark is through your informational interviewing. So when you're out networking and meeting people, and there's plenty of great webinars on the Brandeis archived webinar list on how to do informational interviews and networking, one of the best questions to ask somebody is, can you tell me, what do you think a typical salary range is for a position like this at your organization? And that's a nicer way than saying, how much money do you make? So you'd say, what's a typical salary range for a position like this at your organization? And do you think that's pretty standard within the industry? Because you'll also hear from your network, well, actually our company pays really well, or actually I've heard that they don't pay well. So the more information you can get leading into your actual negotiation, the better off you'll be and the smarter you'll sound when you're speaking to your potential employer. The next thing you need to do is take stock of your own personal situation. So it's important that you know yourself well. And before you start applying, as I say, establish 3 things. what the market is paying for the position in the location you'll be, which I just spoke about, what you need to live off of. Can you even afford to take a position like this? And what you have to offer. So taking stock of your own expenses in terms of transportation, insurance, childcare, loans, it will be different if you're about to graduate or a new graduate versus somebody who's tuned into this webinar looking for some strategies. But regardless, you're all going to have your own expenses and your cost of living in this Boston area or wherever you're going to be moving. It is very important that you understand that this is information for yourself only. Never ever bring up to an employer why they should pay you more because you have student loans or you can't afford the job. This isn't their problem, unfortunately, and it's not a reason that somebody would pay you more money. It's a reason for yourself to understand if you can take the job, but this is just information you need going in. The part that you can share with an employer, however, is really understanding the value that you bring. So if you can clearly articulate what you offer to an organization, how you can bring immediate value, it will really help you when you're negotiating down the road. So understanding what makes you worth a higher salary. So what experiences do you have that sets you apart from the typical person that might be applying for the job? What accolades have you been awarded? What qualities do you have that make you a desirable candidate? How have you gone above and beyond? How will you maybe solve problems for this organization immediately? So really look at the skills you have, the accomplishments, your education, and as I mentioned, what you bring above and beyond the job description, and then be able to clearly articulate, and this is my old branding marketing background from my advertising days, what is your market differentiator? And a market differentiator is that quality that you have above and beyond the job description. So what else do you bring to the table? Do you speak foreign languages? Have you lived overseas and worked overseas and you have a global business perspective? So imagine that they're down to 3 candidates. Why should they hire you? And they shouldn't hire you because you really need this job. They should hire you because you're going to be bringing something above and beyond what the job description offers, or you're bringing a certain set of accomplishments from past jobs. So spend time to understand your value and practice articulating what it is that you bring to the table. This will also help you in your interviewing for sure. And finally, understand what is important to you besides salary. So I have, one of my handouts is a negotiating checklist, and it talks about various things besides salary that might be important to you that you might want to think about as you are going into the job search process, but also the negotiation process. So you're going to have your wish list of every single thing you're going to want, which is not to work at all and get paid a lot of money, but you know, nice vacation, how much you want to make. You have your wish list, and then you have to understand what the lowest salary is that you'll consider, because if you can't live on something, you just cannot apply for those jobs. So understand what your bottom line is. But all of this has to be couched in what is the market paying for jobs like this. So I'm going to ask for the second polling question, Alexandra.
Yes, so our second poll is a quick true or false. True or false, it is best to negotiate salary early on in the interview so you don't waste anyone's time. True or false? We'll give you a few seconds to weigh in, share the results, and then share the right answer. Give you a couple more seconds. Quick true or false. I'm going to close the poll and share the results with you. 100% of you said false.
Great.
Good job.
Absolutely correct. So even though people, let me go back into full screen. This polling questions pop me out of full screen. And one more. Even though people know that it's best not to bring up salary early on, there are ways that people get trapped into bringing salary up early on and oftentimes start negotiating too early in the process. So remember, this is a sales process. At the moment, you are trying to sell yourself to an organization. You want them to buy you. You want them to want you. So the power at the moment is with them. So you want to make sure that you don't get screened out too early in the process. Later on, when they've gone through all of their interviews, all of the applicants that came in, they finally decided that you are the one that they want. That's when you have a lot more power and you will have a lot more leverage in discussing salary. So how do you handle the money question before an offer is made? And I call it the money question versus a negotiation. So on online applications, there's going to be a few places that you're forced to sometimes answer the salary question. Sometimes there's the forced box. Sometimes it's a little more open that will just say, please send your salary requirements. Your goal, though, is that you do not want to get screened out. So the fear is, well, if I put something too high, they might not interview me. And if I put something too low, then they're going to go back to that figure that I put further on down the road and say, well, you said you wanted X amount of money, which I'm going to talk about in a minute because that's not true. So the first thing to do is understand the difference between what is your salary expectation and what is your past salary history. You can answer the questions if it's open-ended, where you can write it in a cover letter, or there's a place where you can write a range. You've done your research, know what your salary expectations are, and put in the midpoint of the range that you've learned about. Now, in conversations with Alexandra preparing for this webinar, we talked a lot about this because there's some conflicting information out there on the internet and even amongst various career counselors. So some information says put the lowest amount that will get you past that forced field. And then in the notes section of an online application, you can say something like, I look forward to discussing the salary range during an in-person interview. Other people say if you do that, you don't want to seem that you're being hostile or obstinate. So the best thing, really, at least my recommendation, I'd love for you to weigh into, Alexandra, is to put in what your salary expectations are. The other piece is there's actually a new law starting in 2018, and Massachusetts is the first state in the country to institute this law. It's going to become illegal for companies to ask you what you were making in the past. So we're not there yet, but past history doesn't reflect where you're going and necessarily the job that you want to take. Alexandra, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, go Massachusetts for enacting that law. But also, really to your point, Ingrid, it's, even what you put in this box isn't going to necessarily dictate where your negotiations go for this specific job. So to your point, I would put something in the midway of the range based on the research that you've done. Something that's definitely not too high to get screened out and not too low where it looks like you didn't do your research. And know that if your interviewer or your hiring manager ever references that number later on during the negotiation process, well, you put in 50,000 on your job application. That's a great opportunity for you to say, well, throughout the interview process, I've learned a lot more about what the job entails, and you've learned a lot more about me and what I can bring to this position. And so I was thinking X. And so just take that piece completely out of the equation because it was before that mutual information gathering phase.
Thank you. And I'm going to add also that sometimes the person that's screening, and it sometimes isn't even a person, it's a resume tracking system with an algorithm, is the person that's screened the interview or the resumes, but people often don't even go back to look at that number, or the person who screened is never brought into the process again, and that number isn't shared. So just move away from that thought. The part that I think people really get hung up on, though, is if the money question comes up during an interview. And the goal is to not get screened out again. The other goal is that you don't want to undervalue yourself. And finally, you don't want to give a firm number. At the same time, you want to be seen as a cooperative person. So you can defer once, but if pushed, you're going to need to give an answer. So the tactics are try not to be the first. You could focus on flexibility and fit. So you might say something like, well, really what's important to me right now is to find the right fit. There's all types of compensation packages out there, and I trust that you're competitive. I really look forward to learning more about this position, and then you follow up with a question. You could also say, I've done my research, and it seems that there's a wide variety in how companies are compensating or paying for this role. Could you share with me your range, what you have budgeted for this position? So you could ask them what their range is first. They might push back and say, no, we really need to hear from you what you're hoping for. And you could say, well, my research says that positions like this pay in the range of X to Y. Is this within your range? And then move on. So you want to first answer it as if it's an indirect question. So again, a direct question is, how much were you making? An indirect question is, how much are you hoping to make? But I always answer it as if they've asked an indirect question. So if they say, how much were you making? You could say, well, what's really important to me is to find the right fit. There's all types of compensation packages out there, and I trust that you're competitive. Then you could follow up, or you could say things like, if they're saying, what are you hoping to make, or what are your salary requirements? You could say, I need to learn more about this position before I would have an exact figure in mind. What is your budgeted range for this position? Or finally, my research shows that positions like these are in the range of X to Y. Is that within your range? You don't want to, once they answer, start negotiating up or down. They haven't chosen you yet. They're still in the interview process. And that's where my giant caution at the bottom says, don't start negotiating. So if you have questions about this, please type into Alexandra and I'll get to them at the end of the workshop. So the next part is when you're actually negotiating an offer. And you have to be ready to take the phone call, know what you want, you've done all your research, you know what value you bring. And the first thing that happens often is people are so excited to get the phone call that they think they have to start negotiating right then. And it's not true. So you're going to get a phone call. For all you know, you are grocery shopping. So when you look down and you see the caller ID, just because you got a call and you were expecting a call and you're excited, don't take the call. Wait till you're in a calm place that you can talk to somebody. So when you receive an offer, the first thing you do is show enthusiasm. So thank you so much. I'm so happy and excited to get your call. If you're not somebody that uses the word excited, I was so pleased to get your call. And other people might say, I'm thrilled to get your call. But show the energy in your voice. I've heard from human resource people that oftentimes somebody's not excited. You might be nervous to negotiate, but they don't show their excitement, and that can start setting a negative tone for your future negotiation. And then you talk about the fit. I really think this is a perfect fit for my background, and I can't wait to get started. Is it possible to send me all of the details in writing, as I'm sure I'm going to have questions? So that way, by asking for it in writing, you're getting a firm offer, but you might get some early clues into if things are negotiable. So sometimes an organization, and I've heard this firsthand, will say, well, I just want to make sure that our terms are acceptable to you before we put things in writing. So that is a clue that they are willing to negotiate. And then you want to get off the phone. So do not start talking about salary and the different aspects that you'd like to negotiate. Just say, is there a good time to speak later this week or speak tomorrow once I've had a chance to review anything? And again, I'm so excited to have received your call. So don't accept on the spot. So then make sure that you have a good place to talk. So where are you going to call them back? Do you have your notes in front of you? Make sure that you're in a good frame of mind. As soon as you get the offer, maybe this is a time to get some support through career services to do a run through or practice, do a mock salary practice. And you're going to have your notes. And as I mentioned, you're going to schedule the phone call and show your gratitude. So now is the tricky part. So you are going to open the door for negotiations. My beautiful slides weren't supposed to click through one at a time, so I apologize for this very verbose slide. But you're going to get on the call and you're going to say, is this still a good time to talk? You're going to reiterate that you are so excited to have gotten their call. And remember that you've done your research and you know what your market differentiator is. And remember, this isn't personal. And this goes back to the very beginning of my presentation, that it is not about you as somebody who needs the job, your bills. It's also not personal if they are not as flexible as you were hoping. So you would start by saying one of a couple of things. You could say, I appreciate the time and effort that went into the interview process creating this offer. You mentioned a starting salary of X, and I'm wondering if there's any flexibility in that number. And then you have to keep quiet. And this is very difficult for people because you put yourself out there. So one place I think people have a difficult time negotiating and will mess up a negotiation is if they keep talking. So literally write out the script that you're going to say and write down, keep my mouth shut, count to 30. And there might be a very long, awkward pause, but people will fill in that pause. So usually the other side is going to say something like, well, I don't know, what were you hoping to make? And then you can say something conciliatory. Well, we're not so far off. I was hoping to be more in the X to Y range, given my, and that's when you talk about your skills and your background or the value, or given that in addition to your needs at the organization, which are X, Y, and Z, I also bring, and then you bring in what else you bring. And then, I'm just curious, is there any possibility of adjusting my starting salary? And again, you keep quiet. Oftentimes somebody will say, well, I'm not sure, I need to talk to a couple people, or, oh, I don't know, we're already bringing you in a little bit higher than what we had hoped. You could say, I understand, I'd really appreciate it if you would be willing to look into it. And then you wait. And I'm going to talk about how you come back. The other part is if you want to be a little more direct. And the reason I'm giving you two options is it depends really what the organization is like. It also depends on who the person is that you'll be reporting to. Usually that's the person that makes you the offer, what their personality is like. So another way that is just fine is, I'm really excited to work here and I know I'm going to be able to add a lot of value. I appreciate the offer of, and I just threw in a number, $58,000. But I was really hoping to be in the $65,000 range based on my research of people with similar experience, drive, and performance. Can we look at a salary more in the $65,000 range? But notice, with either way, it is a question. You're being curious. It's just asking what I call qualifying questions. Can you tell me a little bit more about? Can you tell me a little bit more about? Sometimes people will say, can you tell me a little bit more? You mentioned a salary of X. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you came up with that figure? And then you listen for their thinking. But notice how important it is to know why you deserve extra money. So if they say, well, you're already brought in at X money, you know what your value is and you'll be able to sort of sell yourself in. Anything else you would like to add, Alexandra? Or
No, I think those are all great points. It's really based on your own style and what you feel comfortable with. And, the more you practice this, the easier it will get. But I think you made an excellent point that it's not personal. You already have the job in your pocket. You already have the offer. So this is, the power is in your hands at this point.
And Alexandra and I are going to actually do a practice negotiation for you. She'll be the human resources person, and I'll be the person negotiating, so you'll actually get to listen to what something might sound like. So I'm going to ask the last polling question right now, which is what else? I can't remember what my polling question is. Alexandra?
What is negotiable besides salary? So we've been talking a lot about starting salary, what money you'll make, but select all that apply. So what else is negotiable? Job title, work hours, vacation time, how often you're reviewed for a raise. If folks think of others, feel free to submit them in the question box and I'll share them with the group. So which ones of these do you think are negotiable besides salary. And we'll give you a couple more seconds to weigh in, and then I will share the results. Okay, most of you have weighed in here, so I am going to go ahead and share the results with all of you. So Ingrid, it looks like almost everyone thinks that they're all negotiable. Slight differentiation, but good job.
Yes, so many things are negotiable beyond salary, and it's important to know sort of what salary range you're hoping for, but also if you don't get the salary range that you're hoping for, how else can you bring up your salary? So one option would be, when are you reviewed for a raise? So you could say, well, I appreciate that you were looked into this. I'm disappointed, but I'm wondering if there's another option for bringing my salary up. So here's some of the other things that I've put in: salary bonus, review schedules. So if you're in a field where there's a bonus structure, you might be able to negotiate a higher bonus. You might, for anybody, nonprofit, for-profit, you could say, can you tell me a little bit more about how the review process works? And they'll give you their answer, and it's usually, well, every July we do our performance review, and you could say, would it be possible for this year for me to be reviewed at 6 months for a monetary raise, and again 6 months later, so I would have two opportunities given that you weren't able to bring me up to the number I was hoping. So you could try to bump up your salary that way. And reporting structure, who you report to, relocation benefits, technology. I've known people to be able to negotiate for to have their cell phones paid for, or if they're expected to do a lot of work outside of the office, to get a laptop, stock options, even their title. So you know, maybe that's important to you because different companies have different titles, and where you were before or where you're going doesn't necessarily reflect the title that they have. So that's also an option. So what I want to do is do a quick run through with Alexandra, where I'm going to negotiate. We're just for using the examples I did before. Why don't we say it's that $58,000 offer, but I want $65,000. But I know that I also want to negotiate my vacation. I want to negotiate my start date, and I want flex hours. I'm a very, these are all the things that I'm going to want. And maybe you won't pick all of them, but I want you to get an example of how we could do it. So it's 58,000, but I want 65. I'd like more vacation. I want a flex schedule, and I also want, what did I say, a different start date?
Yes.
Okay.
So do you want me to be doing the first call to give you the offer, and then you'll call me back?
Let's assume she's given me the offer, yes, and then we'll do the whole thing. So you can just get a sense of how this would go, the cadence, and then when it comes time for you to negotiate, you might want to re-listen to this section of the webinar. And then when we're done with this, I'm going to answer a question that has come up for me, which is, well, how do I handle if I get multiple offers and there's one I want more than the other? So that's also a negotiation.
Great.
All right, so we're going to wing it. Here we go.
Okay, so hi, this is Alexandra.
Hi, Alexandra. How are you today?
I'm good. This is Ingrid, correct? So are you calling me back now to negotiate? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So she's offered, fine. So no, you're just you're calling me to make the offer.
Okay. Hi, Ingrid. This is Alexandra. We're so excited. You know, you were a great interviewer. We want to make you the offer for the marketing job, starting at $58,000, and starting in 2 weeks on December 20th. How does that sound?
First of all, I'm so excited to receive your call. I was hoping to hear from you. I enjoyed meeting not only you, but everybody on your team, and I felt so positive about the organization, and I just know that I could add value right off the bat. This is just such an exciting Good day for me. Thank you.
Oh,
So
you're so welcome.
I know I'm going to have a lot of questions, and I'm wondering if it would be possible for you to just send me everything in writing so I can look everything over and find a time to get back to you this week. That would work for you?
Yes, absolutely. I can send you an email with the offer details, and I'll also send you the name of our HR person in case you have any questions about benefits.
That was my other question. So would your offer also sort of map out I know you didn't mention it, but vacation and the whole terms of the employment?
Yes, so those are standard, and we'll point you to our benefits website with all of that information.
Great. Thank you so much. And so when would you like me to call you back?
We'd really like to know by the end of the week, so anytime before then would be great.
Oh, well, I'm really excited to move forward. So how about on Wednesday? We're pretending what's today? Today is Wednesday. I'll give you a call on Friday. Would that work for you?
That works great. Thank you so much.
Okay. So, and what time would work for you?
2 o'clock Friday would be great.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay. And I'm sure I'll just have a few questions. So would you have 20 minutes?
Absolutely.
Great. All right. I'll
We're
give
really
you a
excited to
call.
have you on board.
Thank you. I'll give you a call on Friday at 2 o'clock.
Excellent. Talk then.
Thank you. So what I forgot to do for those of you listening is when I said thank you, I should have reiterated to say again, I'm very excited and pleased to have gotten your offer. So now it's Friday. I'm calling back. The phone rings and Alexandra answers the phone.
Hi, this is Alexandra.
Hi, Alexandra. It's Ingrid Goldbloom Bloch calling. Is this still a good time to talk?
Yes, so great to hear from you. This is still great.
Oh, good. And I have it scheduled for 20 minutes. I'm not sure if it'll take that long, but I just had a few questions.
Certainly.
So first of all, I looked over the offer and I'm really excited and pleased that you selected me. I know that you guys spend a lot of time putting these offers together, and I really appreciate the time that you spent in drafting this letter and the package that you're offering me. Thank you. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the salary, the starting salary. You mentioned $58,000.
Yes.
And it's a little bit lower than what I was hoping to hear. And I'm wondering if there might be any flexibility in that number.
Well, we are we do offer competitive wages, and so 58,000 was in that competitive range that we do offer as an entry point. But what did you have in mind?
Well, we're really not so far off, and I do know that there's a range for how people come in. But I was really hoping to be more in the $65,000 range. As you know, I have experience working in New York City with large marketing and advertising firms. I was awarded X, Y, and Z in my past job, and I know that I can hit the ground running for you without a lot of startup costs. I have a proven track record, and my marketing reputation in the Boston area is high, and I really know that I would be worth that amount of money and could really hit the ground running. If there would be some flexibility on your end, I know we could come to an agreement.
Well, I really appreciate that. And you were stellar in the interview. And so that's certainly why we're making the offer to you. I'm not personally sure because I don't handle the budget about salary, but I can look into that for you and get back to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So should we just resume this conversation then once you have a firmer picture of salary?
Yes, absolutely. I can check with our budget manager this afternoon and hopefully get you an answer by Monday.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. I just really want to not look back once I take this position and just want to hit the ground running, and I really want to feel good about the whole package. So I look forward to hearing back from you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Ingrid, I'm going to stop us here. We're getting in a ton of questions, which is
Okay.
awesome. So I hope that gave folks a little bit of a snapshot of how this conversation can actually sound. We didn't get into negotiating the other aspects, such as vacation and things like that. But it's not such a hard process, and the worst that they can say is no.
And I'm just going to chime in before the questions start. You know, I just decided spontaneously, let's wing this. So of course I didn't have my value proposition, my market differentiators so clear, but it's just, if you notice that the tone, it's not aggressive, it's very conversational. And that's all it is. It's two people having a conversation and you being curious. And as you go about negotiating these other aspects, it's just curious. Can you tell me a little bit more about how your vacation policy works? You mentioned, can you tell me a little bit more about the typical work hours people work here? Well, it's 9 to 5. Well, I'm very productive early in the morning. Would there be any flexibility in me working 7:30 to whatever? And in your mind, you know it's because of the commute. So there's many different ways that you can use these strategies to negotiate the other items. Okay.
Speaking of other items, some of our listeners did add in some other things that could be negotiable, which are great additions. So medical benefits, childcare potentially, tuition reimbursements, and professional development opportunities like getting sent to conferences and things like that. So great additions.
So I'm ready to take questions. I'm excited.
All right. So we've gotten several questions about folks that are interested in negotiating a raise at an existing job. And so, of course, a lot of these techniques that you've gone over, doing your research, identifying your market differentiator, talking about what you bring to the organization would be transferable to that type of situation. Another one of our listeners has been taking on additional responsibilities so that she can have more leverage. What other thoughts do you have for folks looking to negotiate a raise at their existing job?
So I think that's a great question. So the first thought is you don't always have to wait until it's time for your performance review. So for those of you who are thinking of negotiating a raise now or might be in the future, it's very good if you have documentation. You can keep track of, it's easy to forget, all of the great things that you do at work. So really take stock in what you've done to move projects along. Where have you done well at work? Where have you gotten accolades? Where have you proven your worth? Really think about why you are worth the raise. And then say to your boss, I'm hoping to have could I get on your calendar for a closed door meeting? Sometimes just using the word closed door makes it really official. Sometimes they think you're going to quit, but you're not. And then you say, you know, I wanted to talk to you further about my role here. And then you start with what I call the sandwich approach. You know, I've really enjoyed this working on these projects in the last 6 months. Talk about the value you've brought, talk about the different things that you've done since you've started, and say, you know, I'd like to talk to you about a compensation adjustment. Would there be an option to bring my salary up to a more, either if you've learned that you're not as competitive, I'd like to be paid more competitively, or I would really like to be rewarded for the performance that I bring. I'm hoping to bump up my salary. And then again, you have to be quiet and wait to see what they say, but you have to be ready with your ammunition, so to speak. After I just told you it's not a war, and then I'm saying the word ammunition, but what do you bring? What is your market differentiator? What have you proven to them, and why are you worth that extra money?
Absolutely.
Yep. I was going to say, you can also say, I want to continue to feel motivated and continue to feel inspired to be a high performer for you. And what you're basically saying is, if you pay me, I will continue to feel this way.
Yeah, excellent points. I think also some organizations do have a structure in place to do position reviews. If your job responsibilities have changed considerably, there may be a more formal process to work through with your HR department, but to Ingrid's point, your direct supervisor, your manager, needs to be your advocate through that process. So having this conversation with them first, seeing if they're open to it, is going to open the door. As an addition to one of these questions, one of our listeners said um, that she's been with an organization for a while and is now being told that she's maxed out in compensation despite being asked to take on additional responsibilities and continuing to make valuable contributions to the firm on an ongoing basis. So we see this so many times. You're doing 110% and salary just won't budge. In my opinion, Ingrid, I think that's time for you to do your pros and cons list and decide if you are able to, if you want to stay or if it's time to move on. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And decide, are there other working models that would make this place still workable for you? So could you negotiate if they can't budge on salary, can you move to a 4-day work week, which you probably can't if you have added responsibilities? Could you negotiate extra vacation time? So, and also to do the pros and cons of if they give you extra vacation time or a flexible work schedule, will it be worth what they're piling on you? And unfortunately, you come to these junctures throughout your career where you have to reassess and reevaluate, which is why keep your networking alive, because it keeps opportunities coming your way, but it also helps you benchmark if what's happening to you is standard in the marketplace or unique to that organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So another interesting question here. Could you please advise on how to gracefully reject or accept an offer if the negotiation fails and you don't get what you want? So first part of the question, how do you decline an offer? And this is a great question because people often forget that they can decline offers. It's just an offer. You can say no if it's not what
Right.
you want.
So if somebody offers, I think it's all about tone. And if you continue with you being, I really let's say you've asked for more money and they come back and they can't give it to you and you know you can't afford to live on that. So I really appreciate so much that you asked about this. I understand that your hands are tied and that you can't budge on salary. Unfortunately, I really can't afford to make this work. I'm really disappointed because I felt like this is a great match for my background and skills, and I loved meeting everybody on the team. So I have to respectfully decline this offer, but I hope that we can stay in touch and perhaps future opportunities could arise that might be a better fit for both of us.
That's great. And so on the flip side, how do you save face? Another listener asked this as well. If the negotiation fails, but you still want to take the job.
Yeah, so first of all, even saying the word save face is goes back to that psychology that you put yourself out there, you're going to look bad, you're not saving face, you're not doing anything wrong by asking. I've asked for places for negotiations and they've just said, no, we don't negotiate. This is the standard rate that we pay our career consultants. And so then I say, I appreciate that that's your company policy, but I really do want to make this work and I'm really excited to move forward. And then I would move on to negotiating something else. So I'd say, I understand you can't budge on salary. Can we talk a little bit more about how your vacation policy works? You mentioned 2 weeks vacation. In my past, I've been getting 3 weeks. Would there be any flexibility in that number? Let's say, again, you fail. They say, everybody comes in at 2 weeks. You could say, I understand. Would it be possible for the first year that I take an extra week? I already have a vacation on the books for this coming July. So if you ask for a few other things, there might be a way that they can then give it to you. If not, you just say, and you still know that you want the job, you say, well, I thought I'd try. I really look forward to proving my worth, and hopefully that when the review process comes around a year from now, I will be up for a stronger raise. I really look forward to working for you, and I happily accept and look forward to starting in 2 weeks.
Great. Couple of questions coming in about the importance of getting a job offer in writing. So one person asks, what if they refuse to send details in writing? Another says that their organization particularly has an HR office that is just notorious for not providing written offer letters, and requesting one often takes weeks. So is it okay to start negotiating with a verbal offer, or an email offer from your potential supervisor, or should they insist on a formal letter from HR?
Yeah, I would not insist. I think I hear that time and time again where it just the process takes too long. What you could say is, I really look forward, could I get this in writing? No, we don't do that. And you could say, okay, so this is a firm offer though. So you could confirm that it's a firm offer. I would start negotiating without it.
Fair enough.
You agree, Alexandra?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would be very, it would speak volumes about the organization if they then rescinded your offer based on your attempt to negotiate. So I think, if they are making you a formal offer, whether it's verbal or written, I think that's okay to go forward with.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go full circle to the beginning of the presentation where companies have a reputation to withhold as well. And everybody's looking on Glassdoor, all the different websites that talk about a company. And so they really are making good faith offers. They've chosen you. They want you to come on board. I think you have to go into this process believing that everybody has a positive, good faith effort forward, moving forward.
Absolutely. A listener just added this really helpful comment, and just something to keep an eye on. If something is in writing and it has a date, they can rescind the offer if that date has passed, even if you're actively talking to them. Lesson learned, she says. So I guess that's something to watch out for is dates if an offer is only good for a certain period of time. That's pretty harsh. If you get excited or nervous or ahead of yourself during the offer and accidentally accept the position without any negotiation, can you gracefully walk it back to negotiate the details? That's a tough one.
That is tricky, and I think it's difficult because then you are seeming very wishy-washy and you're also speaking volumes about yourself. I think that you might get into the position and 3 months in say, I was so excited to get this position that I said yes right off the bat without really understanding the full scope or without X, Y, and Z. And I hope I've proven my worth to you, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about the offer. You could try to renegotiate, but this is the time to get your salary up as high as you can, because also remember, every raise is going to be a percentage based on that starting salary. So it's really important to try to get negotiate right off and not simply just say yes.
Absolutely. And also you lose your leverage. Your leverage just goes out the window because they know you're going to accept. So
Right.
there's nothing really in it for them to go back and fight for more for you if they already know you're going to say yes.
And also, like we said, when you negotiate, it raises somebody's opinion of you. It shows that you're confident. It shows that you understand that it's acceptable. It shows your negotiating skills. If you're somebody who says yes and then backtracks, it sort of is a negative about how somebody might perceive you.
So another question, Ingrid, specifically about salary ranges. Do you have any experience on the recruitment practices of international institutions such as the World Bank, United Nations, International Monetary Fund, et cetera, et cetera? I would also probably add in federal government. These organizations openly make the salary scale public. So how can you negotiate in those instances?
Well, that's a good question because in government, you come in at a certain pay grade based on whatever they are calculating. So I think if it's government or a public pay grade, I would start by saying, you mentioned a starting salary of X. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you came up with that figure for me? And they would give you statistics, you have 3 years of experience with X, Y, and Z, so therefore you fall into pay grade X. And what you could say is there any possibility that my experience in A, B, and C could also count, which would bring my years of experience instead of 3 years to 6, and it would bring me up to the next grade. You could try, but I think it's much more difficult with government or some of these international agencies. It also goes back to the importance of networking, that if you speak to people in those fields, talk to them about negotiating policies and practices, and if they've ever known anybody to negotiate and how they went about it.
Great. Yeah, those are great points. Um, so the challenge that this listener has with negotiation is the question of the bottom line. They've been out of work for a long time and just need an income, so they're not in a very strong bargaining position. Do you have any tips for managing that and determining a realistic bottom line?
So being out of work for a long time and saying that you're not in a good bargaining position, if you know what the salary is paying for the work that's being done, there's always going to be a range, and that's your bargaining range. So if you are offered in the lower end of the range and you believe that you have the skills and background and market differentiator to come in at the high end of the range, I think you do have a bargaining power there. I think that psychologically the fear is I've been out of work so long, I just need money. And the other side doesn't know what your psychology, what your debt is, or what your financial situation is. So you really should be paid fairly for the work that you're being hired to do. I, I don't know if I answered that
Yeah, no,
clearly.
I think it also relates to our question, another question we were talking about just before this started about your thoughts on career changers who are negotiating an entry-level salary after switching fields, and in their past field they were maybe at a management type level. Um,
Mhm.
I think it really is, about doing your research and understanding what the range is for the specific position that you're applying for right now. Um, and so that can help you figure out your bottom line as well.
Absolutely. And maybe there's a range, and if you were a manager moving into an entry level position, you would be able to negotiate coming in at the top of the range, but you still have to know that each position has a budgeted range.
Absolutely. So these are excellent questions. There unfortunately are still some coming in that we can't get to today. It's already past 1 o'clock. But any final thoughts, Ingrid, before we go into just some next steps for folks?
I think the final thought would be to really download that script and get comfortable, get a friend to walk it, be the HR person, and you are the um, person negotiating the job. So you get comfortable actually just saying the words. It rolls off my tongue now. If somebody says something in an interview about money, what's most important to me right now is to find the right fit. There's all kinds of compensation packages out there, and I trust that you're competitive. So I want you to get to the point where you can say it just as easily as I have, and also really spend time networking and doing the research so you understand what the range is, and most importantly, do some self-assessment. Look at yourself, your past accomplishments, and be able to speak about your value. And my final thought is just try it. It is worth being uncomfortable and putting yourself out there, even if they say no, because the upside is thousands and thousands of dollars.
Well,
So
thank you so much. This has been such great practical advice. I really loved it. I hope you all got a lot out of it as well. Just a couple next steps. Please fill out our satisfaction survey and let us know how we did today. We host these webinars every month on a variety of career topics, and so we tailor them to fit your needs. We have one coming up in January on rebooting your resume. So if you are actively job seeking and your resume needs a little tune up for 2017, we are here to help. Ingrid spoke a lot about informational interviewing and expanding your network. The alumni network is a wonderful opportunity for you to have these frank conversations about salary, about new career fields, about potential jobs. So please join us on LinkedIn in our LinkedIn group. And another reminder is that undergraduate alumni get free career counseling appointments for life through the Hyatt Career Center. So you can do that in person, over the phone, or via Skype, and that's the number to call right there. I'll also leave you with my contact information. If you have any additional questions or you want to learn more about the career services we offer, feel free to get in touch. Again, this presentation will be posted online later this afternoon. You'll receive the link to the recording as well as to the slides. So thank you so much to Ingrid for being with us for the last 64 minutes. And thank you to all of you for joining us.
Thank you, and I hope you have a nice rest of the day.